Hello and welcome back everyone, Weeb online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Naruto Became a Cyber Demon Part 10. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
In the middle of August 2007, Naruto was 20 years old and in the interior of Alaska. "Damn it, Olga," Naruto thought as he sat on a strong branch and drummed his fingertips on the trunk of a tree. He put his other hand to his ear to show that his codec was on. "For the love of Kami woman, call me already. I know you woke up by now." Alaska was so much nicer to live in during the summer than during the winter. It was just silly. Since the conversation with Colonel Jackson where he was told he was thought to be dead, Naruto had been living off the land and staying away from all towns and public places. The whole thing made him feel bad, but Naruto was always seeing the bright side of things, even when things looked very bad. He thought that things could have been much worse. He might have died. Anyone could have been killed, not just Olga or Snake. All of his weapons, ammunition, and platform board were still with him. He had hidden them near where he was hiding. For the first time in 2 years, no one was looking at him. That deep-seated fear that had been building up in his mind since the Leon incident was gone. They did this because they thought he was no longer useful. He and Snake were blamed for what Ocelot did to the tanker. At least the Patriots were kind enough to have him declared dead if he and Snake were going to be seen as terrorists. At times like these, he really wished he still had Henge no Jutsu transformation jutsu to use. Of course, he had felt this way during every single infiltration mission he had ever been given. He was sad about his situation, but crying about it wasn't going to help. He had given Snake directions to find him, and he was now waiting for the veteran soldier while trying to pass the time by calling Olga. He was really bad at that last thing. They probably changed their main frequencies before they left on this mission, just in case something went wrong, he thought, mostly because that's what he did with his own. Besides that, they were a group of traveling mercenaries. It was possible that they were no longer stationed at the same base. And Olga's own radio was lost because the USS Discovery sank and an explosion was used to cover it up, which leaked oil into the harbor. His problem was that the new base wouldn't have the same ways to talk to each other. He also found out why she wasn't calling him, as if that wasn't bad enough. After talking with Snake about where they would meet, he was scared and had a flash of his slowly growing paranoia. He changed his frequency to one of his standbys without meaning to. That was really cool. Not a single person on his team knew about his new frequency. "You're such a dumbass, Naruto." So he couldn't call her and ask how she was. His real father had died not long ago, but Master Miller knew what it was like because his own father had died not long ago either. Now that he is free, he might be able to sneak over to Russia to see her and his team after meeting with Snake. Either way, it was time to get back to work because his elite team of recon clones saw a car let 2 men out. They were going to walk the few miles to the house on the one dirty dirt road that led there. In order to wait for them, he had been in the forest. But it was taking longer than he thought. Even though Otakon was clearly not very fit, he and Snake should have been there an hour ago. He tried to ask his clones the question through their mental link, but they weren't acknowledging him. He knew the connection was still alive because he could feel them, which made him 10 times more paranoid, so he just sat there to wait. XXX scientist and Snake's closest friend Otakon asked, "Are you sure we should have gone ahead, Snake?" as he walked behind the man in the forest with a big suitcase. He was sweating because he was wearing an extra layer on top of the rest of his clothes, a brown trench coat, black gloves, and gray pants. "And how much further do you think it is?" Snake said with a laugh, "You shouldn't have worn that stupid trench coat, Otakon." He had a lit cigarette in his mouth as they walked. She wore a dark blue button-up shirt that was open and a white t-shirt under it. She also wore blue jeans and brown boots. It wasn't on his forehead, but it was still close by, like it always was. "Well, excuse me for trying to be prepared for coming to Alaska." When Snake turned to show Otakon the look on his face, he said, "It's July. Unless we're staying here until the end of summer, when you'll really need that, I don't think you needed to be that ready. And what are you talking about? Should we have gone ahead?" Hearing his friend's voice, Otakon aimed his glasses to avoid making a scene and said, "Well, you know what I mean. It's not like I'm that kind of person, but..." Snake stopped Otakon before he could go off on a tangent to defend his earlier comment that he didn't think they should have gone ahead. Well then you can go back then if you think that I was wrong and that you can actually protect her. Snake then turned to the man and quickly shook his head, then calmed down. I'm supposed to be dead, remember? And besides that, no one even knows how or where to find us. Even though the book about Shadow Moses got a lot of attention, no one really knew what any of the people involved in the incident looked like, including Snake. Because he still had to be careful, he couldn't take a commercial flight. Other than that, he would be fine. Still, maybe I'm just more gentlemanly than you, Otakon said with a grin to make Snake laugh. Snake laughed when he saw what Otakon was planning to do. Snake wasn't very good at humor. Sorry. But in the past, more women have shot at me than tried to get me to buy them dinner, so you can see why my chivalry is sorely lacking, he said as he rubbed his nose and saw a big house. I don't think that girl is going to need any help either, considering how nice her family is. Snake had a gun hidden under his shirt, even though he didn't think there would be any trouble here. As they walked up the open driveway and front porch to the door, his hand kept going to it. Otakon looked around and heard and saw nothing that would have led him to believe that anyone else was there. Are we sure he's here? I mean, these are the coordinates he gave us, but Naruto never really struck me as someone who could handle logistics well, he asked. That's not a nice thing to say about me. Otakon screamed in fear when he heard the blonde man's young voice standing right behind him. He almost jumped out of his shoes and ran behind or in front of Snake before he could reach the front door. Since Naruto had already shown himself to them, Snake sighed and turned to face the blonde with a smile. You've got to make your own fun somehow, kid? Since we're dead terrorists and all. Naruto frowned and walked to the front door to open it himself. Dead terrorists? That sounds like a great band, he said as he quickly picked the lock on the door and let everyone in. Welcome to Master Miller's old house. I haven't been here in almost 4 years. We're safe here? Otakon wondered, wouldn't there be someone trying to sell or buy this house by now? He died 2 years ago. Someone still owns the house, Naruto said as he walked into the dark foyer and replied, I don't think she sold it or ever planned to sell it. I'll be out of here before it matters anyway. She won't know I was here. I really wouldn't count on that kid. Snake looked like he was having fun, but being in his old house wasn't fun at all. He asked, so what's it like being home? It looked like a museum and nothing had changed since he left to join Foxhound. Naruto started to walk through the house and said, it stinks. He also said, no Master Miller, no kitty. This isn't home anymore. The house was just a place to stay until he could figure out what to do next. His time in the US was over. Armed forces, and the Patriots let him go, even though they did it in the worst way possible. After that, he felt someone touch his shoulder. He ignored it because he didn't want anyone to feel sorry for him. After a short time, the same hand touched his shoulder again, this time with more force. What is it? He asked in a huff. He was then pushed around and met a pair of angry-looking green eyes. Slap. Yes. He knew the young blonde woman's eyes very well because she was his sister in every way except blood. They were angry green eyes. There was still a long braid in her blonde hair that went down her back. 2 bangs framed her face, and she wore jeans and a dark red long-sleeved shirt. He gave her a necklace, and she still had it around her neck. What the hell did you get yourself into with this blackmail crap? Catherine asked right away. On the other hand, Naruto wasn't sure if he was more shocked and stunned by the fact that she had just slapped the taste out of his mouth or the fact that she was there at all. Wasn't he said to be dead? What's up with that, kitty? What are you doing here? Catherine snapped at the taller blonde. I knew you weren't a dead dumbass. You wouldn't do anything like what they said you did on the news, bombing up a whole ship of Marines and yourself. That's a cowardly move, and you're not a coward. She then turned away from him and crossed her arms. So I decided to move here and wait for you to come back. I knew you would eventually. I just didn't think you'd beat me here. At that very moment, Otakon spoke up. Believe it or not, she got in touch with us. He saw the surprise on Naruto's face and laughed sheepishly. Yeah, I couldn't tell you how she did it either. At that moment, everyone looked at Catherine for a long time, making her feel uneasy. Well, are you going to explain or what? She asked. Catherine said with a shamrock look, I don't really want to. Kidia, fine, she agreed with a huff. Ever since you left LA with that colonel to work off your blackmail, I started checking some stuff out. Some things branched into other things since I was using the internet and the book about Shadow Moses as a guide. I looked into the author, Nastasha Romanenko, and found that she had donated a lot of her money from book sales to a non-government organization, Philanthropia, and then the dominoes started falling. As Snake leaned against the doorway with a new cigarette in his mouth, he growled, "It was that easy for a baby like you to find us?" She wasn't even Master Miller's daughter, and as far as Snake knew, she hadn't been trained at all. When she met them in Canada, it wasn't something he liked. "I'm 18, you jerk," Catherine said flippantly before pointing to Snake and the Otakon. "And it wasn't easy at all. After I got that far, it took 2 years to pull up enough information to narrow down your frequency. You need to scramble it more. But maybe if you weren't such a Luddite like my brother, you'd understand how to cover your tracks better in cyberspace. It's as good a weapon as anything else these days." Catherine's statement was supported by Otakon, who said, "It's true. I've been telling you, Snake, just because there's no record you can see doesn't mean there isn't any record of something at all. If you weren't such a technophobe, aside from when it comes to guns, we'd have better luck." Snake just muttered to himself by the door about stupid kids. Naruto snapped back, offended that she called him a Luddite. "I just don't like all that computer stuff that much. That doesn't mean I don't know anything about them or that I hate them. I cover my tracks just fine. Thank you very much, little Miss Cyber Rat." Catherine poked fun at Naruto, and he poked back. "I don't see you for 2 years and I have to deal with this crap right off the bat? Can't I get a hug or something? Damn it." Well, Catherine couldn't argue with him, so she softened her face, put her arms around the bigger blonde soldier, and let him do the same to her. "You jackass. I should be so mad at you. I told you I didn't want you getting caught in something bad just so you could keep me safe, or whatever your foolish crap is all about. And now look." "Sorry," Naruto said truthfully, "I did my best. I thought they had already screwed me over as badly as they would have done as long as I played ball." He tried very hard not to ruin her life, but it happened anyway if a link could be made between them. That would be hard to do because he wasn't her legal family member and there was no paper or digital record of his existence other than the information the army had on him. The only information they had on him was from physicals, which was highly classified because of his jeans and graduation picture. Even so, it wasn't completely out of the question, since some of Catherine's friends had met him before. They might remember who he was from a brief meeting if they were interested. Otakon saw a lot of similarities between his relationship with his sister Emma and the relationship between the two blondes who seemed to be siblings. It was pretty painful to see. Even though they weren't biological siblings like he and his stepsister, they were brought together and became close. Naruto then left, just like Otakon had left his family back in the day, but for different reasons. He was able to keep most of his honor when he did this. Of course, Naruto had never let his sister down like he did, because he wasn't sure he would have been able to keep it up if his sister had been really using her as a threat against him for so long. Snake said, "Well, the kid's alive, girl. That's all that matters." As touching as the reunion was, he just wanted to get back to work. He was not going to let what happened in New York Harbor stand. For the Patriots, Ocelot had a new Metal Gear that was very dangerous. Who were these people? Before he died, Liquid only said that they were the ones he really wanted to kill and asked, "Now what do we do?" They all went into the living room and sat down. While they talked, Naruto made copies of his clones to go back outside and watch over the area. Snake sat in a wooden chair near the door, and Otakon sat in an easy chair across from him. Catherine sat down next to Naruto on a couch and looked around, feeling like the only person there. "So, since I'm here and I'm not going anywhere, can you guys tell me what the hell happened last week or something?" XXX There is a Gurlukovich mercenary base 50 kilometers from Vladivostok, Russia. Most of Sergei Gurlukovich's standing mercenary force lived in a newer base farther south than the one that had been inhabited before the event at Shadow Moses. Gurlukovich used to be the commanding officer of the Spetsnaz GRU. After all, that honor belonged to his daughter Olga, even though she wasn't too happy about it. Olga punched a stone pillar hard enough to chip off a good chunk of it, and Johnny stepped back a few steps. "Miss Olga is really pissed," he said to Meryl and Sniper Wolf. who were nearby, along with dozens of other people in the room. Johnny's balaclava-clad head got smacked on the back by Meryl for making a stupid comment. She just woke up and found out her dad and her friend were dead. "I would be upset if I were her," she said. In Russian, the soldiers closest to Olga were trying to calm her down. Wolf shook her head. "What happened out there?" they asked. By that time, the whole world knew that Solid Snake and Naruto Uzumaki, better known as Shadow Moses, had blown up a tanker in the harbor as a trap for Marines trying to take control of a terrorist hostage situation. The worst environmental disaster in history. The news is BS. There's no way he's dead. The media had to be seriously hacked for that lie to get through. Meryl was adamant. Of course it is. No, neither Naruto nor Snake were that way. And as partners in crime, they both died on the ship. That's right. The fact that they worked together at Shadow Moses was just a coincidence. Their relationship would have ended badly even if Naruto had made one different choice. I don't like this one bit. Johnny blinked, but his worry could not be seen because he always wore a face mask. He heard the jingling of spurs and turned around to see who had just walked into the room. Oh. Heads up. That got everyone's attention, and Ocelot walked right in. The crowd thinned out, letting him walk right up to Olga. She glared at him with a hateful look in her eyes and asked, "What do you want, Shalashaska? Are you happy now? You've been in my father's ear since I was a little girl, and you finally got him killed. I guess you're going to try and take control of the unit next, aren't you?" She said this in a half-joking way, but her hand was slowly moving toward her gun at her waist, just in case that was what he was after. Ocelot kept walking toward Olga until he stood in front of her, well within Olga's reach if she wanted to hit him. It was clear that she was thinking about it because her fists were clenched while he stood right in front of her. That didn't bother Ocelot. He just spoke directly to her. "Your father and all of those men on that ship died to get Metal Gear Ray out, and that duty fell to me because I was the only one who could steer it to safety. You know what really happened, don't you?" Olga gave a stiff nod before she started to go against what the people who had stayed with her when she woke up had told her. "The explosions we set off to gain control over the Marines in the hold went off, and the ship sank. Meryl, Johnny, and Wolf all paid close attention, even though they didn't know what exactly went wrong." "And how do you think they were detonated?" She replied, "Either my father or you." Olga's glare was as strong as ever. If looks could kill, one of Ocelot's eyes would have been drilled through him somewhere. Someone less skilled than him would probably be scared off by the statement. He was the only one with a real remote detonator. Anyone else would have had to set off the laser traps or be at the explosives to do it. They would not have survived. "You simply don't understand what occurred," Ocelot said, tapping his temple, encouraging Olga to think. "We had cleared the deck of any guards, and only Snake and the Naruto brat were on that ship with us. I saw both of them down in the hold trying to fight for Ray. Little blonde bastard is still more trouble than ever, though he's not little anymore." Once more, the new leader of the Gerlukovich mercenaries bit her lip and asked, "What happened? Tell me." Naruto told her he wouldn't kill anyone. Why did this have to happen then? What did Ocelot mean when he said Naruto was to blame for everything going wrong? Poor upset thing, Ocelot thought to himself as he felt like he had won. Olga was listening to everything he said to figure out why her father and the other men who had gone on the mission weren't with them anymore. The boy picked his spots well. Too bad he wasn't very attentive. The second your father held up the detonator as a threat to the Marines below in the hold, he thought it was a weapon and threw one of those damnable throwing knives at Sergei, hitting the detonator hand and dropping it, which set off the explosion that started to sink the ship. Oh, it was so helpful to be the only living person in the room who had seen what had really happened. As he looked around, he saw that most of the mercenaries were angry because they remembered Naruto badly from when they met in Iraq and how he stopped their plans at Shadow Moses. They did believe everything he said, though. Even though he had a clear advantage, not everyone in the room saw it that way. Wolf said in a low voice, cut out by the noise of the Russian soldiers talking. "He's full of shit." The female sniper looked at Ocelot with narrowed eyes, as if she were aiming a gun at him. "Little Proby. If there was one thing I made him understand, it was to be sure of what you were aiming at before you attack," she said. It didn't matter if it was a gun or one of those knives he liked so much, he knew better than that. Meryl and Johnny really wanted to argue with Ocelot about this point, but in a room full of people who wanted to kill Naruto, it wouldn't have helped. Olga was the only one whose belief really mattered. Even though Wolf didn't say anything, "Now come on, Ocelot. You know full well that even if you didn't give him the time of day to teach him better, I certainly did. He wouldn't have beaten me if you were that lacking in his attention to detail." Ocelot looked over at his former foxhound partner and said, "I'm telling you what I saw." He didn't seem worried or angry about her doubts. He knew that those two were the closest on the old team, but he didn't know if they were still dating after Shadow Moses. "I recognized him and shot at him while he had one of those things ready to throw. I missed, and his focus slipped. You know the rest. He's angry." Everyone knew he was, so she couldn't say he wasn't. That means that even if it was an accident, it was still possible. Olga's mind was a mess from everything that had been going on lately. She wanted to keep her father safe from the man she thought was a snake among them. Did the person she asked for help end up killing her father? Since she passed out on the USS Discovery, she hadn't heard from him at all, and no one could reach him. He wasn't picking up the phone when she or anyone else tried to call him, so was he trying to avoid her? Had he really done it? Ocelot had no choice but to leave when Olga put one hand on her head, sat down, and said, "Now." She didn't want to see the man anymore because she was still very angry with him. It was clear that Ocelot was upset, but he didn't argue or try to get close to the woman. He did what was asked of him and left the room. The many mercenaries in the room left with him because they didn't want to see the new leader, whom they had loved for years as Sergei's daughter and the best fighter among them, in this state, where she looked like she was about to cry. Meryl, Sniper Wolf, and Johnny were the only ones who didn't leave. The reason Johnny didn't leave with the others was that Meryl had the back of his collar and wouldn't let go. There was only Olga, the three of them, and Meryl in the room. She walked over to her and kneeled down in front of her. "You don't think Naruto or Snake really did that, do you?" Olga spoke with her head down and her face hidden. "Solid Snake. Maybe. He had nothing to do with me at all. But Uzumaki, I don't know. Why hasn't he been picking up?" he said, as she stopped herself before she said something personal from their last conversation that she didn't need to say. Wolf walked over to Olga and gave her a hug to calm down. "Just be easy," he told her. "I know how you feel right now, but remember your baby. All of this stress and tension is not going to be good for it." Johnny started to pace back and forth and say, "I can't believe any of this. Boss is the most honest person I've ever met. There's no way he'd kill your father, Miss Olga. No way. He'd know what that would have done to you. What if he thought his life was in danger?" She asked herself, would he have done it if that were the case? According to Ocelot, her father was holding a detonator, and she had seen Naruto kill people. Even though he was nice to people he liked, he had a dark side that was clear from all the lives he had taken in the past and the many ways he had said he wanted to kill Revolver Ocelot. There was also the chance that he was working with Snake on that ship. How likely was it that they were both there? After she passed out, she never saw what happened between them. It was clear that she was thinking too much about what was going on when she got a headache. For now, it was best to just do what Wolf said and be easy. You could take things one step at a time. For now, she had to clean up her whole house since she was in charge of everything. The thing Ocelot wanted, Metal Gear Ray, was now his. He might leave them alone now, even though she would be keeping a close eye on him. "I guess we'll stick with you until Naruto shows up again," Meryl said, crossing her arms over her chest. "He's not dead, so don't worry. He can tell us his side of the story when we talk to him again." She should be proud of how much faith she had in him. Olga knew this. She wished she could be as sure of what he was doing. But it was hard to do that because no one could talk to him. "I'm definitely going to punch him right in the face when I see him again. One way or the other." He couldn't have a good reason for not calling her, so he was either dead or trying to avoid her. "Uzumaki, what did you do?" XXX with Naruto, Snake, Otacon, and Catherine. A wilderness in the middle of Alaska. A Miller home. After hearing the three men in the room tell her what had really happened on the tanker, Catherine looked at them with awe. Those kinds of things only seemed real to her in movies. Hey, that would be a cool way to make money years from now. Making a movie or several about it. Does this happen a lot? She asked her older brother, who was sitting next to her. He shrugged and said, "Not really. Not like this anyway. This is new." Snake laughed sarcastically and said, "No, because after my operations I'm always accused of being a radical eco-terrorist. This happens all the time." Catherine rolled her eyes at Snake, and Naruto told him, "Stupid kids, no respect." Otakon put his hand on his chin and thought about what had happened and what had happened after. "They were good," he said. "Were we really making that much noise with them by stopping all of those Metal Gears from being made? What a setup." Snake and Otakon told them that they were working to stop, destroy, and find information about how Metal Gear games were being made. They were starting to get attention from the UN now. They had no credibility left, what little they had. It was clear that ties were broken. So why frame Iniki too? Wasn't he working for them? Catherine asked with a tilt of her head. "If you keep grunts in the dark," Naruto raised his hand and said, I think I know why. I kind of went off the reservation for a Dead Cell mission and took one out in Japan. That probably pissed them off now that I know what I do now. I didn't know they actually wanted other countries to make Metal Gears. That's the kind of crap you tell someone that fought one and blew it up," he joked. Otakon put his glasses back on. "Yes. You see, we had heard that the Patriots were behind a new Navy version of Metal Gear that we heard had failed. The one on the tanker, wasn't it? That was just another Metal Gear mission I decided we could take to try and dig up more information on the Patriots. They didn't want us looking around for any more Metal Gears that we could dig up info on in case we stumbled across the one they're building. You just stepped out of line and were too dangerous to keep around." "What did they have you doing anyway?" Snake asked Naruto, curious about what he was supposed to do for the Patriots. Naruto briefly looked at Catherine with his blue eyes before realizing she was looking right at him and asking what he had been doing for the past 2 years. "You mean besides killing people they sent me to kill because they were trying to get their secrets out? I've been stealing nanomachine tech improvements, blueprints for new weapons, and spying on companies that are making new technologies and reporting what I find. I don't know why they needed me for any of that," he said. The blonde girl with green eyes let out a sigh when she heard that he had been killing people. Catherine knew Naruto's full job description and that he had been doing some of it for her, but she couldn't picture him as a killer because she had never seen him do that before. Snake asked with a raised eyebrow, "Did they ever try to send you after us?" Naruto was sent to kill people who were too close to finding out about the Patriots. If that was the case, wouldn't have been sent to find and kill those people first? They seem to be the closest, right? "What's the reason?" "They didn't know where you were," Naruto said, as if he hadn't just hinted that he would have probably been sent to kill them if the Patriots knew where they were. "You guys are really good at covering your tracks," he said. As Otakon put it, "It kind of helps when you don't have any family connections." He then shook his head. The fact that Naruto and his stepsister were no longer close wasn't his fault. It was just that seeing Catherine with Naruto made him feel a little bad. Naruto thought of Emma when he saw how much trust she seemed to have in him. But enough about that. "Do you have any plans right now?" "Thanks for the question." He was not allowed to stay at Master Miller's house. He was only there because it was a safe place to hide for the time being. He would have to carefully leave the building once he had a plan, or else his hiding place could be used against him if he ever needed it again. He was not going back to the lower 48 states in the US or staying in Canada. Ukraine? No, that was clear. From where he was, it was the easiest place to get to. The Patriots were no longer looking at him now that he was free, so he wasn't going to mess that up by being impatient. She was strong and didn't need him to comfort her, even though he wanted to go find his friends. She would likely hit him anyway if he tried. She also had Johnny, Meryl, Wolf, and Wolf. It wasn't the right time for him to go to them then. Naruto finally said, "I don't know." He then added, "I was trying to find my own information about the Patriots, but I kept getting nothing. But I'll tell you one thing," he said as he got up and paced around the room with a frown. "I wanted to get away from them, but the way they did it, I might as well be dead. I can't even spend much time with the person I worked for the Patriots for because I'm a terrorist that's supposed to be dead, so I'm their scapegoat, and that really annoys me." Snake smiled as he saw the younger man walk around in the second worst mood he had ever seen him in. "That's politics, kid," he said with a smirk. He almost laughed out loud when he heard Naruto snort like a bull and ask, "What are you going to do about it?" "Find them and beat the crap out of them. That was my original plan when I got into this mess 2 years ago." Naruto looked at Catherine and then asked again, "Kitty, do you have access to everything Master Miller left you?" Catherine was angry about how far she had to go to make sure that the things her father had left her after he died would stay with her. "Yeah. As soon as I turned 18, I took every bit of inheritance I had and moved it out of the country," she said. They looked skeptical when she talked about the money she got from Miller. "Come on now," Snake said. "Master Miller was a jerk like me and this kid. How much money did he really have that you had to move it out of the country without keeping it yourself?" Catherine asked Naruto from across the room. "You knew, Aniki? He doesn't know that Dad was loaded? Wow, I thought he knew Dad pretty well." "Of course I knew," Naruto said before pointing to the house. "Look at this place. It's huge. And all of the property around here belonged to Hima, not to mention all of the guns and ammo that you can find laying around in any room. And the fact that he bought my legal identification, yeah, I knew. I never had to ask. Guys who choose to live alone are kind of rich because they can afford the land and food they need to avoid having to go into town every week. Miller never threw his money around, and Naruto didn't care about it either. But it was pretty clear when Miller gave Naruto cash or a bank card to run into town and run some errands. Even more so when he crashed the truck while learning to drive and no one was mad about it. "And that's why I'm going with you to whatever you do next," Catherine said with confidence. "Are you out of your fucking mind? You're going with me? Not a snowball's chance in hell. I'd rather leave you with them than take you with me," Naruto said, pointing at Snake and Otacon. "Hey," Snake said as he smoked another cigarette. "Don't put me in this. I don't babysit kids, rookies, or watch over women. She is some unholy combination of all three. Master Miller's daughter be damned. I never asked you to take me, Snake. I was talking to that stubborn blonde jerk." Catherine got up and walked over to Naruto to scold him again. "I'm not staying out in the open where those jerks can use me against you again, and I'm not going to stand here and watch you run around looking over your shoulder all the time. I can help," Naruto said with a smug look, "and I can just knock you out and leave you here. There's really not anything you can do to me to force me to let you come unless you have a gun or something on you." Catherine quickly reached into the cushion of a nearby couch and pulled out a Beretta. Naruto grabbed it, disassembled it right in front of her face, and gave it back, saying, "Yeah. Don't do that. I know where all the guns are too." Catherine looked at the gun parts she was holding and said, "Jerk." She didn't understand how he did that so quickly. "Why don't both of you come work with us?" Kate, Naruto, and Snake all looked at Otacon with surprise, since it was he who made the suggestion. For his part, Snake let out a cloud of smoke and asked, "Otacon, why are you asking them that? I thought you, of all people, wouldn't have wanted Naruto near you, remember?" When Naruto heard that Otacon didn't like him, he raised an eyebrow and asked what he had done. Otacon just scratched the back of his neck and said, "Well, I did. But there's no reason not to now, right? We're in the same boat here. He didn't want me to be near him. What did I do to him?" Naruto asked himself with a puzzled look. "Even though I almost shot him 3 times by accident, which I blame on the stealth camouflage. So, we're a team now?" he asked Catherine, but she can't do anything. Catherine insisted, "Yes, I can. I might not be you or Snake, but I know how to use a gun and fight a little." She saw Naruto open his mouth to yell at her again, so she put a piece of the disassembled gun she was holding in his mouth to stop him. "I'm not going to do that, though. You'll need some kind of support for the things you do, won't you? Someone needs to take care of you. That much I can see by now." As Naruto spat out the gun part and cursed, Snake looked at the girl as if he was trying to see something that wasn't right in front of him and said, "Put that gun back together for me." Catherine didn't argue until she bent down to pick up the piece Naruto had spit out on the ground. "I shoved that pretty far into his mouth. It's covered in spit. Do I have to?" Snake growled angrily, and Catherine quickly picked up the piece before making sure everything was in order. She put the Beretta back together in 30 seconds, even taking the safety off and cocking the gun, there. She then removed the safety and put the gun in her purse nearby, asking, what was the point of that? Snake didn't answer, but instead asked her, "The kid is right. What are you going to do to help us out? Is there something you're good at that you can do?" After Snake put her on the spot, Catherine said, "Well, I'm not much for fighting. I'm really good at finding information. I found you, didn't I?" She joked with a grin and went on, "I think I'm okay as a hacker. I'm not stupid about combat. Besides being rich, I can fly planes, helicopters, boats, and I even learned how to use a tank." That was new to Naruto, who asked, "What?" Catherine raised 2 fingers in a victory sign. My high school had an aviation program and I got my hands on old pirated VR training programs. I think I even stole one on the old Metal Gear D model and learned how to use that for fun to supplement the actual fighting programs. I didn't like those too much." As Snake rolled his eyes, Otacon asked, "For fun?" Snake knew Otacon didn't like the virtual training, so he said, "Just like a video game." "Huh? Snake might want to look into some of that stuff. It would be more useful than sitting in front of a computer screen and waiting for something to happen. It's likely that the genome soldiers use these training programs to get better." "You stole training programs?" Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. "I'm proud, kind of mad, and terrified at the same time." She said they were out of date, but she wasn't going to try to lift the newer ones without first lowering the heat. As right as it was for her to steal something, she did the right thing by taking the old ones. "And I can actually cook." Catherine added later, "I doubt that between the three of you anyone can make anything more complex than a pack of instant ramen, right Aniki?" "Hey, was that a shot at me?" Naruto asked after a moment of realizing what she was talking about. Snake said, "One last question," in a very serious voice that made Naruto move closer to his sister to protect her. The room was so quiet that Otacon almost held his breath before asking, "How do you feel about smokers or smoking in general?" Otacon laughed out loud at the stupid question and fought the urge to palm his face. Naruto and Catherine both looked at each other and blinked owlishly. The older blonde then shrugged and motioned for the younger girl to answer. "Smoking is gross, but I don't really care one way or the other," she said, not sure why that was even important. Snake made a direct attack on Otacon's feelings about his long-term habit by asking, "So you wouldn't sneer and moan at me for having a cigarette every once in a while like some kind of mean housewife?" Kate said, "No, just keep it out of my face, and we'll be fine." Snake wasn't one of those guys who had to smoke at odd times, even when they were out in the field. He was a better worker than that, right? Snake smiled and said, "Then you're in." He then turned to Naruto and said, "She's your responsibility though, kid. Like I said, I don't babysit." It seemed right to work with the daughter of the man who had trained him a lot, and the man who could be seen as his son from that point of view. Not paying attention to Catherine's angry squawk of, "I'm an adult, damn it," Naruto nodded and gave the angry young woman a one-arm hug. "It's not like she's going to be going out on active missions by herself," he said. He wouldn't let his little sister fight in any way that would make her like him. And there was no way he was going to put her in more danger than was already necessary. When Otacon got up from his seat, he walked over to Naruto and Catherine and shook their hands. "Well then, welcome to philanthropy," he said. Naruto and Catherine smiled and said, "For what it's worth these days I guess." "That sounded catchy to me," Naruto said with a sheepish grin. "I thought we were going to go with the dead terrorists name." At that moment, Catherine scrunched up her nose in disgust and pushed Naruto away from her, asking him, "What's the matter?" "You need a shower." "Bad. Now move," Catherine said as she pointed upstairs with her other hand on her hip. Naruto rolled his eyes and slogged up the stairs to his old room to get something to change into first. "Well, sorry for living outside for a week," he muttered as he went up the stairs at Catherine's request. "Love you, Aniki." "Ma." Catherine ran upstairs to bother Naruto like they used to when they had a moment of peace. Snake looked over at Otacon and said, "So we're going dark great." Naruto had better bring some inside information to the table here that we didn't already have, because the last thing we need to do is feel around blind. "But we do need information, and Naruto has to have some real information," Otacon said as he sat down again. But Naruto seems to think that he wasn't anything more than a hitman for the Patriots. "We could try to pick his brain for his mission history, but what do you think we'll actually find?" Snake thought out loud as he stroked his chin. "If we can piece together what he's done to the people he's had to kill, the things he's stolen and spied on, then we might be able to see the bigger picture." XXX after 2 months a mission briefing. She said, "Happy birthday, Aniki." Naruto. "It's not my birthday until at least midnight and I've got to spend it working. Thanks for that you guys." Snake. "Quit your belly aching kid. I'm around too. You act like you've never had to work on your birthday before. This is our best opening for you to retrace your own steps in this place. Now suck it up and let's get this done before daybreak. Then you can do whatever you want about turning 21. Uzumaki." Man, I wish I had my team for Thesa. All I've got is Snake, and I don't think he'll be running to my rescue for this one if it screws up. Snake. Damn right. Don't fuck up, this isn't really the place for it. Otacon says. And don't forget that you don't have your clones for cannon fodder either on this one. You left them with me and Catherine to cover us for your extraction point. Naruto. Trust me, I know it and I don't want to hear it out of you, Snake. You couldn't notice that there was a damn cipher in the sky watching us during our fight in New York? Snake. Well, you weren't exactly the most attentive one either, brat, or do you now qualify as being legally blind? Maybe we should replace you with a younger model? One with less tread on the tires? Naruto. Speaking of being old, are you sure you'll be able to keep up, Grandpa? I don't need Kitty to keep the engines running while we wait for you at the extraction point. As Solid Snake said, I'll show you, old you stupid. Catherine. Shut the hell up already. God, it's like dealing with a bunch of babies. I'm about to turn my radio off if this is all I'm going to be hearing out of you two. I already know my part, so I don't need to listen to this. Otacon says. Right, let's get down to business. Catherine's part is fairly simple. She's just meant for the escape. She'll have the seaplane running once she hears that you're all on your way out, and we'll be your support team on your codex from inside the aircraft. Snake, you'll be heading to the offices to follow up on what we've been talking about for the last few weeks. Naruto, you're heading to the detention camp for your part of the mission. And Naruto Uzumaki said, of course I am. Catherine says, don't be like that, Aniki. You're the only one that knows what this guy looks like, and he's the only one that knows what you really stole back then. We need that information, so you have to be the one that goes in there. Snake. My part is harder anyway. Uzumaki Naruto. Bullshit. I'm warning you, old man. I will find you right now and we can switch if that's how you. She said, I'm tuning this out before they start up again. Otacon says. Catherine, no, Snake. Naruto, you guys need to calm down. You can beat each other up after this is over and everyone gets back in one piece. Now, Snake, we need actual records of what the man Naruto's going to find actually told these people about a huge project we've been hearing about. You're going to hook me into the main servers in the Navy base part of the location and I'll find it in a hurry. Naruto. About my part of the job. What makes you think that this guy is going to even tell me what I want to know? I am the entire reason he's here, by the way. And I don't want to try any torture or anything, I feel guilty enough as it is. Snake. You'd better get over that pretty quickly. Besides, you can't afford to interrogate a prisoner here, kid. There's no opportunity for it. Naruto Uzumaki asked, are you sure we can't get him out? Snake. Do you want the Patriots to start messing with you again while we still know nothing about who they are? It's only been 2 months and we're doing a pretty good job of staying underground even with you two blonde brats with us. Don't mess it up. What are we going to do afterwards if you did break him out? Now's not the time. Naruto. That's okay, I don't have to like it. Snake. Yeah, well, don't pull a sniper wolf for you, that was a good one. Everyone thought you had actually killed her. Naruto. I know. That was the whole point. I had to watch Otacon cry, remember? Ms. Miller. Awa Otacon. Aniki made you cry? That's so mean. He should apologize to you. Otacon says. Can we just start the mission now, please? I really don't want to hear about how I was there. So let's begin, shall we? XXX getting into Guantanamo Bay. The main goals are. Find out anything you can about a secretly being worked on new Metal Gear level project, Snake. Get into the base's detention camp and find the VIP prisoner you want to find. Go ahead and get whatever important information that got him there that can be given or received. Naruto. Do not leave any evidence of your visit at either facility. Main goal for both weapons are bought on site. 4 miles north of Guantanamo Bay Naval Base, October 10, 2007, Naruto is 21 years old. The southern shore of Guantanamo Bay is where Naruto came out of the water. He was wearing the same sneaker suit he wore in New York, and his blonde hair was tangled up. The mask on his face was up over his mouth and nose, making him look like his old sensei Kakashi. But Naruto didn't feel any nostalgia as he pulled the mask down for a moment to spit some water on the ground and began to walk up. Swim from shore to shore, Kitty says. Water walking would make you stand out like a sore thumb, she says. She can swim that shit next time herself, Datbeo. Snake had to go through the bigger naval base for his mission, but that just meant he had more places to hide. Naruto was going to Guantanamo Bay's most remote and almost legendary highest prison camp. A lot of people didn't even know it existed until a year ago. Camp 7, also known as Camp Platinum. Its location was a secret, but all that was needed to figure it out was to look at the map's blank spots and work from there. There wasn't much of it, and it was hard to find, but for someone like Otakon, to find the camp in the square miles that the US when the government had Guantanamo Bay, it was pretty easy. Even more so if they had hacked into the Pentagon's files before. I think it would be scary if Catherine could learn how to hack like that, since Otakon was so good at it. He eventually found the camp and its dark surroundings. It was a small, gray building that looked like a fortress but had no windows or anything else that would make it stand out from the dirt around it in case someone saw it from above. As there were no lights to help people watching figure out where they were, it was clear that the guards watching from the outside would have some kind of tool to help them see any possible intruders or escapees, if that ever came up. There was also the fact that he couldn't see anything because it was the night of the new moon. He could have waited 2 weeks until it was full moon and he could see something, but this mission had to happen right away. I hate Snake and his procure on-site BS protocol. He was going to bring glasses or contacts just in case he missed a trap and blew everything because he couldn't see. So, he brought his own night vision glasses because he didn't have sonar or natural night vision. So he couldn't just kick a guard in the nuts and take their night vision goggles. If that guy woke up, he'd know that he had been knocked out, which would set off alarms somewhere if or when word got out. Because of this, he left his HF blade, knives, and other bladed weapons with Otakon and Catherine. If he had them, he could have killed someone by accident. There was to be no fighting at all, ever. There was no way for anyone to know that anyone was ever there. He was lucky that the solar gun on the forearm of his suit was fully charged in case he had to fight his way out, but he wasn't planning on that happening. That's why having a team was helpful. He quickly set his codec to the right frequency and called out, "Hey Kitty. I'm at the sneak point and I'm starting, but I have a problem already. I know that the guards outside can see me if I try to sneak over to see if there's a way in. If I get too close, at least one of them will see me no matter what." In the beginning, there was silence, but then Catherine spoke up. "Otakon says that you wouldn't have any problems if you had Soliton radar. You'd have their field of vision to look at in the corner of your screen," she said. Naruto's angry jaw snapped shut. "The corner of my screen? What? Well, I don't have any goddamn Soliton radar. If he has the system, please hook it up for the next time I have to do something like this." "Hey yeah. Why do you even bring that up if you didn't give it to Aniki? Does Snake have it?" Catherine asked. Then Catherine heard more talking, which she thought was Otakon. Otakon told Catherine, "Oh. Well, they lost access to the satellite after the tanker incident. The UN didn't want to keep lending their satellite to a terrorist group. Like philanthropy. Even if Snake's supposed to be dead." "That's just great because I can't even see how many fingers I'm holding up in front of my face right now without the goggles, it's so dark." "Stop. It was dim." He thought of something and said, "Hold that thought. I think I've got a good diversion." "Is this a stupid diversion? It's stupid good? Don't get caught please." Naruto cut off the transmission and charged up his solar gun. "Wouldn't dream of it, Kitty. Later. It would waste a lot of his weapon's stored energy, but that wouldn't matter once he got past the guards." As he turned toward the bay, he charged up a single shot and let it go all at once, sending it flying over the dark water in a way that looked like a UFO. The weapon's long-range aim was all over the place, so when it pointed straight up into the sky, the big ball of light really did look like an alien. "Did you see that? What was that thing?" That's what Naruto wanted to hear. Sounds of chaos and maybe even fear. His favorite sound was the sound of heavy boots hitting the sand. He positioned himself so that the guards wearing night vision goggles would not see him as they ran to the water to see what they had missed. Naruto used his lightning release powers to sneak past them and short out the electric lock, letting him go right through the front door. No cameras even for security. A little too privacy conscious, don't you think? I thought to myself as I walked inside, Naruto said. XXX The Guantanamo Bay Naval Base is with Snake. Snake broke into the home of the base commander first because many people brought work home with them, even sensitive information. After looking everywhere and not finding anyone, not even the commander, He quickly left the building and hurried through the dark to the check-in gate, which was separate from the working part of the gate that only personnel could access. It was also easy to get past that, but when he got to the base's main offices, he had to stop because the whole building was lit up like it was the 4th of July. "Geez, you think you've got enough lights turned on? All you're missing are signal lights for planes and choppers to land," he said. His codec went off, and he quickly answered it to silence the beeping in his head. "Yeah, Otakon? I'm just outside of the offices right now. Getting in is going to be a pain." That seems to be a reoccurring theme tonight. Naruto ran into some trouble getting into Camp Platinum a little while ago. Snake made a joke. He probably tried to push open a door that needed to be pulled. Then he heard talking on the line, which might have been Naruto's younger sister asking, "What's going on?" "Nothing, but Catherine said you can't have any of Naruto's cake when she makes it today once we finish. Something about you picking on him for no reason." "Ah. But what's the problem you're having getting into the offices again?" "She should give that jerk a cake. He was also working. It's too well lit out here. It's ridiculous. What a waste of electricity. Long story short, there's no way I'm getting in through conventional means. Any ideas?" "Oh well, we have one. Lay it on me then." "Do you think you can get into the sewage system?" Damn it. XXX Camp Platinum is 4 miles north of the naval base and is where Naruto is. As Naruto walked through the dark halls of the small building, he thought to himself, "This place is as sad as hell. Seriously, it was only meant to be used for one thing: holding prisoners." The hall was empty except for cells and noisemakers to make sure that the prisoners could only hear what was playing in their own cells. This is where they send guys to just disappear forever. There was only one small window in each cell door, so Naruto had to wear his night vision goggles to see through it. There were no windows or natural light inside. The only light coming in was from the dim fluorescent lights in the hallway outside, which made it hard to move around. It was very easy for Naruto to hide in the dark because there wasn't much light. He saw that no one inside was wearing goggles. They wouldn't waste batteries on them if they could see well enough to move around. There was no way anyone could get that far into Gitmo and find the secret prison camp, right? It was easy for anyone who was ready to patrol the halls to take on this task. That was still going to be the case after that night because Naruto didn't want anyone but the person he had come to see to know he was there. He thought, okay, as he clung to the ceiling and crawled along it to get away from the guard who was watching him. For 3 minutes at a time, he went by each cell, giving him 3 minutes to do anything before he had to hide again. "Come on, where are you?" When he lost sight of the guard again, he began counting down in his head and then silently fell from the ceiling to start looking. He finally stopped when he looked into one of the cells and saw a figure huddled in the room. Colonel Jackson, he told himself as he made a few hand seals to start channeling lightning chakra into his hands. He then used this to break the lock on the door, sneaking inside and closing it quickly before the lock and security system went back into action. "Who's there?" The voice was worn out. What had been going on with him inside? "Kami Colonel. What did they do to you?" Had been his 2-year-old boss, who was sarcastic but in charge and sure of himself. This wasn't that man. "A rapture? In the flesh. If I could see you and get up to take a swing at you, I might feel like doing it," Naruto said with a frown that wasn't hard to see. "I'd probably let you. You look like hell, Colonel." Jackson sat up on the small bed in his cell and laughed in a mean way. "Yeah, well, they threw me in here right after your little attack went public. They frame you, and then they throw me in here when no one outside of Dead Cell could even link us together. It seems like they're overcompensating to me." Naruto gave a nod and then looked around the room with his safety glasses still on. There were no windows or lights, just a steel toilet. 2 months. "What about your wife? What did they tell her?" "Helena," Jackson said, sighing and looking back at Naruto. "They gave her some bullshit about corruption charges and misappropriation of government funds. They black-marked the pay I issued you and the resources set aside for you so that you could do your job. The same things given to every member of Dead Cell, and they pinched me for it because they scapegoated you and wanted mouths shut. Why didn't they just kill you? I don't know, maybe to find you. During interrogation they asked me the status of Operative Rapture. They seem to want to find you again, kid." That meant that the grunts who were questioning Naruto weren't given any specific instructions on how to get information from Hima, at least not by name, since they were only given his codename. He said, "Fuck that. They'll find me again, right before I shoot them in the head or stab them in the heart. That way, not even they will know they were looking for a dead man. Jackson sat against the wall next to his bed and thudded his head against it. Well, give them one for me too, he said. I'm not leaving here. This is just a preamble. After they're done with me, they're going to need this space. They'll send me to Leavenworth to lock me up and throw away the key. Shame on them. 3 minutes, Naruto told himself as he quickly shushed everyone and hid in a corner of the room. A shadow passed by the small window at the cell door. The man spoke again after giving the guard time to move away from the cell. I have to ask you something, Colonel. You were my handler even when I had to go on missions for the Patriots. I told you about everything I did and gave it all back to you when I was done. Because he was in a coffee place, Jackson said. Coughs, yeah. Which one in particular? You know who you killed. You always got the backgrounds, so I'm guessing you're talking about your smuggler's runs. Naruto began. In January, you sent me to Mumbai. He thought about the mission in question. Before the tanker incident, he was sent on one last real mission. I had to kill a certain programmer and get anything he had on him. It wasn't hard, but something didn't sit right with him or the people he told about it. So I took his money, ID, flash drives, and his briefcase. In his briefcase was a black box that I couldn't break into. When I came back, you only wanted the briefcase. You didn't even look at the flash drives. What did I steal? Even after the 3 minutes had passed since the guard walked past the cell door window, the room was dead quiet. Jackson finally spoke up after about 5 minutes. Jesus kid, I told you to run. You should have just taken your ass to New Zealand or something, found a cute girl to settle down with, and stayed away like a good soldier, he said. Many people have told me that I'm not a good soldier when it comes to following orders. Naruto tried to joke, but Jackson didn't laugh. They can't keep doing this to people, Colonel. If I don't try to do anything, then who will? Who will ever learn enough about the Patriots to make a move on them if I don't? Now come on. Tell me what I stole. When Jackson finally spoke, he took a moment to think before saying, fine. You want to know what you took? You took the blueprints for the ultimate scanning and filtering device. Naruto asked with a confused tilt of his head, scanning and filtering. What? In the dark, Jackson knew for sure that Naruto had done what he said because he could hear his voice and picture the confused look on his face. Luddite. Jackson said in a low voice, getting an angry, oi. Before he continued, that man you killed had created a program that when integrated with another main computer program could look for and identify abnormality or undesirable bugs in the main program. Glitches in programming, human-made mistakes, etc. It was meant to be the ultimate debugging tool, and was meant to assist in the beta testing of software devices, but he was thinking too small with that one. Or too big I guess since you were sent to kill him and retrieve the finished product for the Patriots. Thinking too small. Had Naruto's computer education not been mostly about Master Miller teaching him how to use a mouse, keyboard, AOL, and hit him on the back of the head the first time he went to a porn site? Naruto stood to let Jackson know where he was and said, but that's what you stole. I'm more than certain that your tormentors really cared about easy debugging when they had you steal that. I don't even know what they needed it for way above my head. Jackson got out of bed and walked slowly over to Naruto. Well, that filled in a big gap in Naruto's mission history that he hadn't been able to figure out. It might be possible for them to figure out what the Patriots' goal was with this. Naruto thanked the colonel and said with a sad face, I'm going to get you out of here. That's a. Jackson told Naruto, if you keep that promise, kid, I'll castrate you. He then grabbed Naruto by the loose neck of his sneaker suit and dragged him as hard as he could toward him. Naruto could already tell how weak he was because he had probably been tortured many times and was locked up. He was furious that someone who had never done him any harm was in this situation because of him. But why? You didn't do anything wrong. This isn't right. I can't let things like this happen if I can do something about it, he yelled. Jackson held Naruto tightly to make sure the young man was paying attention. This room is a good metaphor for your situation. You're feeling around in the dark, barely able to locate your own ass. Instead of fumbling around aimlessly trying to find others to drag out with you. He then pointed to Naruto's cell door and tiny window and said, you should take your own shot to get back to the light while you have the chance, because you can always go back into the dark if you want to. Now get the hell out of here. Naruto just stood there staring at him in the dark with his night vision goggles on after being forced to leave by his former commanding officer. After that, he took them off and stared into the dark cell until the shadow outside the cell passed by the window again. If you could see into Naruto's dark eyes, the thought of leaving Jackson there would have made them flash red. He then stopped himself and thought, philanthropy's motto is to let the world be. But what if the world is shit? Yes sir, they said. The seaplane they were using to extract couldn't hold more than 4 people plus Otakon and Catherine's gear. Goodbye Rapture. See you soon Colonel. You'd better not. Naruto quickly sent electricity through the lock and alarm to break them both. Then he opened the cell door and quickly left to find a way to get out of the facility without leaving any signs. XXX The main offices at Guantanamo Bay Naval Base are with Snake. Snake's least favorite way to get into a building was through the sewers, but they worked great to get him into the basement offices. After going through the empty sewers, he finally came out of a manhole cover set in the concrete floor of that basement. Snake couldn't fight as part of his mission, so he had to wait for a long time before moving from one place to another. Eventually, he found a set of stairs that led straight to the 5th floor, where he wanted to be. When Snake got to the commander's office and tried to break into his computer, Otakon told him, "All right, Snake. Since you're not going to break into that computer anytime soon." Snake got angry when this was pointed out, and Otakon continued, "Right. Moving on. I'm going to need you to plug in the flash device I gave you. It's set to copy all documents, non-native images, and accessories automatically." Snake asked his partner, who was very good with technology, as he watched a small red light start to blink on the flash device, "How long is this going to take?" "It depends on how much is on the hard drive. It could take up to 5 minutes. When the red light stops blinking and turns solid green, you can remove it and leave. Until then you'll have to." Snake ducked behind his desk and whispered, "Wait." He saw people walking up to an office door that was closed and trying to look through the glass. "I didn't do anything to let the guards know I was here," he said. "So why were they looking in an office that they wouldn't have otherwise?" "That wasn't something I had time to think about because the door lock started to move around. It was dark in there, but anyone with good room sweeping skills could see him right away." In light of this, Snake looked around for any way out of his situation. His eyes lit up when he saw exactly what he needed. The office door opened, and 2 men looked in from the doorway. They looked all over the room, but couldn't find anything. "Are you going to stop babbling about a friggin' smell now or what?" one of them asked. "I know I smelled something thaw. Duh," the first guard said as he walked around the desk, being careful not to trip over the silly cardboard box at the end of it. "It's like the smell of shit that won't go away. It's on the whole damn floor. Deal with it. Talk to the maintenance guy when he comes in this morning." Phinia. As they left the room, the first guard continued to scold the other, "I'll never understand why you chose this room as the source of the smell. Do you want to check the hall closets next? We could do this all night, you know." He jabbed his partner as he shut the door. After giving the 2 a moment to leave the office, the cardboard box next to the desk started to shake and tilt to reveal a cutout for looking. Snake got out of the box that was on its side and threw it away. He looked happy that he was free of any charges. When he smelled himself, he got mad because he knew he had brought some of the sewer's smell with him. A box? Did he really just hide from armed guards in a cardboard box and get away with it? Catherine asked over the phone. Otakon's headset microphone could pick up her voice of doubt. "Hey Otakon, whose idea was it for me to get in here through the sewer?" Snake asked on his codec, which he had obviously not turned off while he was hiding under his cardboard box. He was going to the computer to check on the status of the flash device. When Snake spoke, Otakon took a moment to answer. Catherine's?" he asked. He then heard a smack over the line. "Ow, okay, I'm sorry." Snake said when he saw the green light on the device and ducked down to get it. "That means it was your idea. You can clean this suit when I get back. I'm on my way out." With that, Snake sneaked out of the office and started going back downstairs to try to get out the same way he came in, whether he liked it or not. XXX After 3 hours a northern shore of Guantanamo Bay. Otakon said, "It's been a while since we've heard anything." He was sitting in the passenger seat of a seaplane in a hidden cove and asked the girl in charge of the controls, "You think they ran into trouble?" Kate shook her head and said, "Then they would have called us for sure." She then looked east and saw very faint spots of light. I wish they'd hurry up though. I don't want to run away in the sun and risk being seen. It had been a few more minutes of sitting still and waiting when they heard the sounds of swimming. This made Catherine and Otakon look over and see Naruto and Snake swimming toward them. They could get into the plane through a back door that Catherine opened with a smile. Naruto was the first to get in. He crawled on the floor and then pulled up a seat. Even though he was wet, he was annoyed and asked, "I couldn't water walk again because?" As he began to take off his sneaker gear. "I'd have been here 2 hours ago if I could have just ran with the old man on my back like I wanted to." Snake told them as he got on the plane, "I don't need you to carry me, and I'm not an old brat. I'm just 35, so cut the senior citizen crap." He then waited for his suit to dry quickly, as it always did, before sitting down. Nick replied, 35 is old. He then used a towel to dry his head, hair, and the arms that his suit had left bare while he was in the water, from the biceps to the shoulders. Otakon leaned over to Catherine and whispered, "Someone's mad about something." He then looked at Naruto and asked, "Hey Naruto, are you okay? You said you found the person you were looking for and Colonel Jackson told you everything you needed to know about your mission." While sitting in his seat in his underwear, Naruto crossed his arms over his chest and said, "He did. But I can't free him. I was right there. I knew it was wrong for him to be there. I wanted to do something, but I just left him there. Damn it, this is so messed up." He punched the metal door of the plane and then sat back down. As Snake looked around, the other people in the plane were quiet until he sighed and said, "Let's get this thing into the air and get out of her while we can." Catherine agreed and began warm up the plane for takeoff. Now that Snake's suit was dry enough to sit down, it did so next to Naruto, who was angry about what had happened that night and saying, "Kid, you know why we couldn't take him with us? No room on the plane with us and all of the stuff. The Patriots would find out that we sprang him from Gitmo and would be after me and maybe you again, and he could still have been a decoy or a spy." Naruto kept listing all the reasons why escaping with Jackson wouldn't have been good for them. Snake frowned and said, "Listen, I know this goes against your code of honor or whatever you call it, but you knew what this was going to be about when we told you about the mission. I would have gone if you said you didn't want to." He shook his head and looked over at Snake with a hollow look on his face. "No," he said. "If you'd gone, you would have said something about me to get him to talk. If he was going to have to take a slap in the face like that, it should have been me. It didn't sit well with him at all to ask someone for help who was there because of him and then not free them. Self-loathing doesn't work for you," Snake told Catherine as she sped up to get ready to take off. "If it really bothers you that much, then just make up for it later. Or if you can't think of a way to do that, then just hold it in until you find the jerks who caused all of this." Although Naruto was barely aware of the plane taking off, he said, "That's the one thing I'm not going to do. I'm not going to fight the Patriots for revenge. Fighting someone like them for revenge is like shooting yourself just to try and hurt them with the kick of the recoil. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do and because someone has to. You killed Liquid for revenge after what he did to Master Miller." Naruto said to himself at the end of the event on Shadow Moses Island, "Wanting revenge makes you do stupid things to get it. And I'm not selling my soul just to get a swing at those jerks." Catherine had her eyes fixed on the ground as she prepared to take off. She hadn't paid much attention to what was being said because of the person in the back seat. "Okay, Aniki, I need you to put on some clothes because you're distracting me," she said, her face turning red. Naruto blinked and woke up when he saw that he wasn't dressed. He raised an eyebrow and said, "Wait a minute, you still think that way? It's been 2 years since we had that conversation, and you're still. Just put some pants and a shirt on already, damn it." Naruto was hit in the head with a pair of sweatpants and a white t-shirt by Snake, as Catherine had asked. XXX. Sometime Lautera unknown location. Vamp smiled as a new person walked into the room where Fat Man, Old Boy, and Chinaman were already present. "Welcome back, Queen." The person walked through with a cold look on her face and asked, "Any luck?" All 3 of the other Dead Cell agents looked at her. The woman was African American, but her blonde hair reached her back. She wore combat boots, a dark sleeveless skin-tight bodysuit that ended right where her thighs started, and a brown trench coat that was loosely draped over her shoulders. "That stupid bastard isn't dead. If there was no body, he isn't dead. And if he isn't currently dead, then his life belongs to me," she said. Vamp shook his head and put his hand on her shoulder. It was only a matter of time. Rapture is good, but he just doesn't have your luck in the end. He's very unfortunate. Almost the opposite of your codename, Fortune. He laughed and said, "You're not the only one who wants to cut the Japanese brat's bleeding heart out, Queen." The full-body dragon tattoo on Chinaman's face moved slightly, as if it could feel his anger. "If I ever beat you to him, you'll have to hear about how I made him beg for my mercy since I'll be the one killing him." Old boy swore vehemently in German, and the only thing that people who didn't speak more than one language could understand was that he said Naruto's name between bursts of bad language. Fortune clenched her fists tight in anger as tears pricked at her eyes. "He killed my father, and that's why my husband is in jail. Even after months, it still hurt. And with all the bad luck, my mother couldn't handle it and she also killed herself." She walked away from Vamp a few yards, with her back to him. Vamp grabbed a throwing knife out of the blue and threw it at her neck. It missed her and bounced off a metal wall in the room they were in. "Rapture. Can't kill me. No one can. Luck on the battlefield and nowhere else," she said. Fat Man laughed a few times as he looked at the wall where the knife had hit before asking in a deep voice, "You really are Lady Luck, aren't you?" He hadn't felt anything when Jackson was arrested other than amusement, but things had been more fun for the bald mad bomber since Fortune joined Dead Cell and learned of her amazing power. Fortune didn't pay attention to him and turned to look at the wall where the knife had hit. She saw that the knife Vamp had thrown at her had hit a poster on the wall instead. Naruto's face was on the poster, with a X through it and the knife buried in the middle of his forehead. XXX after 4 months, a forest? What the hell was he doing in a forest? Inside the safe house, he fell asleep. That was it. If Catherine or Snake were trying to play a joke on him again, he was going to show them why they shouldn't mess with him in that way. While lying on the forest floor, Naruto slowly stood up and looked around. He couldn't see the safe house anywhere. Assholes. This shit wasn't funny in Edmonton. I don't see why they did again. They know I'm just going to get them back. He then dusted himself off and stood up to try to find his bearings. How far away did they take me? And why am I dressed? Naruto was even wearing his operational gear. But there was something else that seemed odd. The forest was well known. There was no pollution in the air at all, which was something he was used to in the forests of the world he lived in now. He had been in the elemental nations the last time he could really smell the cleanest air. He then quickly set off in the direction of the north. He had to see for himself if he was really there. He was running as fast as he could until he heard a sniper shot. The shell hit the tree in front of him and stopped him in his tracks. He looked in the direction where he thought the shot came from and then ran away quickly so that the next time he didn't get hit by a bullet. He turned around, though, and saw a desert eagle staring right at him. Bang! A bullet went through a log that was lying next to Naruto. It's better than his head. After yelling, "Meryl, what the fuck?" Naruto was about to kick her in the stomach to get back at her when another sniper shot him in the leg. Wait. Meryl. He thought to himself. What does that mean? Johnny's here too, an automatic gunfire that was meant for him but missed wide and didn't even get close. He didn't even have to look to figure out that the terrible shooting was coming from Johnny Sasaki. No one else could be that bad. So Wolf must be shooting at me. What are you guys doing? Meryl yelled. You left us to play lapdog for the Patriots. She turned her gun back toward Naruto. But Naruto backhanded her, hitting the gun and kicking her away before running off. We trusted you. You ruined our lives. Naruto just ran off to get away from her, Johnny, and Wolf's scope. Go ahead and run again, you coward. All you're good for is running and hiding. This dream is a bunch of crap. Not even for the usual reason. Naruto thought to himself as he ran through the forest and stopped suddenly on a ledge with a view of the Valley of the End. Why is this happening? He then heard birds chirping, a sound he hadn't heard in almost 10 years, and it made him freeze. Chidori 1000 birds. Naruto was back in the same clothes he had worn when he was 12 years old. He was the same height and everything else. The pain of having the electric hand shoved through his chest filled his body and stopped him in his tracks before he could even yell. Naruto turned around to see Sasuke staring at him with a smirk and a Sharingan-enhanced glare. Some friend you are, Naruto. You couldn't even stop me from running off with the most evil man you'd ever met, our village's worst enemy. You weren't even strong enough to stay alive to try again later. Your promises don't mean anything because you're too weak to keep them. When Naruto turned his head back, he saw Olga pointing a gun at his face. She had the coldest eyes he had ever seen and was saying, "You promised me, Uzumaki. You said that everything would be okay. I'll talk. You watched my father die and didn't even bring Ocelot back for the trouble. What did you do? You let down your best friend." Again, Sasuke said, his arms still stuck through Naruto's back and through his torso. "It looks like you can't do anything you thought you could." Before slowly pulling the trigger on the gun in Naruto's face, Olga said, "I told you I would kill you, Uzumaki. I told you, you're still just a weak bag of flesh, boy." XXX Early February 2008, a border between Washington State and Canada. His eyes opened, and Naruto's breath caught because he had just had a bad dream. He didn't sit up or wake up with more of a start because most of the time, his dreams were worse than the one he had just had. Even so, what he did was enough to wake up Catherine, who was sleeping next to him in bed. "Aniki, what's wrong?" she asked as she blinked tiredly at the other blonde. She looked closely enough to see the cold sweat on his body and the bags under his eyes that were more noticeable at night. "You had the nightmare where the Dr. Clark lady was doing experiments on you again, didn't you?" she asked, guessing that was the one that kept coming back to him most nights. "No, this one was different." Naruto sat up in his twin-sized bed and let his legs hang over the side. It was clear that he had failed in his attempt to not react to his nightmare. He wasn't going to sleep again that night, so all he had to do was wait for Catherine to fall back asleep. Then he could get up and try to get things done. She didn't just roll over and fall asleep, though. Even though she acted like she did, she didn't really. She sighed and sat up on her elbows in bed. "Anika, we need to figure out how to fix you. You can't keep sleeping like this. Were you sleeping like this before I got here?" Naruto said, "Yeah, pretty much." That's when he finally gave in and tried to sleep. He didn't like sleeping near Dead Cell and only did it when he had to. "And we can't fix this. Even you can't get me to relax enough to stop them," he said. "Just don't worry about it, okay? Everything'll be fine." He got up and grabbed a shirt from the floor to walk around the safe house inn because he wasn't going to try sleeping again because his next nightmare might have him strangling his little sister by accident. Catherine let her elbows give out and fell back on the bed with a solid thump. She stared up at the ceiling with a sad face and said to herself, "Just because you've been dealing with it for years doesn't mean that it's finia." After he left the small room, as Otacon sat in front of the tech setup he had set up for the short time they were there, Naruto walked out into the main room of the small building they were staying in for the time being. He looked for something on his computer and looked like he was working on 3 things at the same time. It was 4 a.m. when Naruto sat down next to Otacon, which startled him briefly until he realized it was just Naruto. "Oh hey," Otacon said to the young blonde soldier, "You're up early again." "It's 4 a.m. Naruto rubbed his eyes and sighed. "I guess if every time I tried to sleep I had torture flashbacks I wouldn't be a big fan of it either. And it's always been like this?" Naruto said, "Since 2003. He then tried not to yawn while he spoke. "So I guess Snake's outside to smoke while he makes you do all the work." Otacon nodded and returned to his computer work. "Yeah, he's bored. While we're out here, we're trying to find that lab where you and Gray Fox were held a few years ago, but we only know it was near the US-Canadian border, so I don't think we'll be able to find it again." Snake said as he came back inside from his smoke break, "There won't be anything there anyway." He then lit the last bit of his cigarette and saved it to throw away later. "No need to leave a trail because of your own bad habits," he said. "You and Gray Fox destroyed that place on the way out, right?" Actually, Naruto, who was possessed by a Kyuubi, destroyed the place on his way out. While making his way above ground, Gray Fox killed almost 100 soldiers and Dr. Clark herself and made a huge mess. In the end, Naruto cleaned up the mess and destroyed the whole place. And a real cleanup crew wouldn't have left behind any signs of the building that would have been easy to find. So now they wouldn't even have anything above ground to look for, even if they had been able to find the original base, which was unlikely since they would have had to search 600 miles of forest to find it. Snake then put his hand on Naruto's shoulder for a moment and asked Otacon, "Do you have anything on that yet? So we're still trying to figure out what you stole that device for the Patriots for." "No idea," Otacon said, raising his glasses to rub his eyes drained. "It's a hell of a creation thaw but I don't like it." It takes too much of the human element out of computer programming at its very core. I mean, people program what they consider to be mistakes into the debugging program, but what if it gets rid of something that the creator didn't think was a mistake? And even if it did, imperfections and mistakes are what give things charm, what makes our accomplishments so special. To think about what the Patriots might have wanted to use it for would have been a bit confusing. Maybe to find all the mistakes that could be made in the next Metal Gear design. But it didn't look like it would happen. He leaned back in his chair and said, "You don't need me for this part. I want to go to Russia now." The room was very dark, with only the lights from the computers and other electronics shining on the walls. "Now," Snake asked in near amazement, "we figured out what we did about New York Harbor and you want to go now? We should be figuring out how to stop that thing from going up." "This can wait." He was impatient and said, "I need to go see them. I've been waiting for over 6 months." Snake. He had been calm and not made a big deal out of it. Even though time had passed, he was still very eager to learn how they were all doing after what happened on the tanker. They had all been working so hard that they had finally reached a point where they could stop. He got tired of just sitting there and being lazy while Otacon broke things down so they could understand over time. What Snake learned during his part of the Guantanamo Bay mission hinted that people would need to leave the base and go to New York to oversee the building of an offshore cleanup facility big enough to handle such a disaster. There were no engineers or other professionals, just military people. That made sense from the point of view of the cover-up about how the philanthropy terrorist group caused the disaster by spilling the oil in the first place, but they knew it was for another reason. What was hard at that point was figuring out what to do about that situation. "You want to go see them? Is that so wrong?" It wasn't the first time they had argued about it. They met for the first time 3 weeks after starting to work together. The only thing that kept them from fighting was the help of the 2 civilians who were standing nearby to keep things as calm as possible. But Naruto was not going to give up this time. Snake wasn't being asked to do something dangerous like storm a fortress. Snake only needed to keep an eye on Catherine until he got back, which wouldn't take long. "You don't even know how to find them again, kid. The most famous mercenary unit in Russia. How hard do you think it'll be to find them? I'll be gone for 2 weeks, or 3 if it's harder than I think." Naruto got up, slid his chair back, and said, "If you don't have a real reason for me to stay here, I'm going to get dressed, grab my board, and I'm leaving now while nothing's going on. I can be in Alaska by sunrise and over the Bering Strait by noon." There was no way Naruto didn't understand what he was saying. He was sure his board worked, knew how fast it was, and knew how to cross the Bering Strait by himself. Snake told Naruto, "You're going to go no matter what I say, so go on and get the hell out of here. But if you get discovered..." Naruto waved over his shoulder as he walked to the room to get his own stuff to leave. "Tell me where you're going next in case you leave before I get back. I'll hide the whisker marks and smooth back your hair. Maybe put in some contacts. No one will know it's me unless I want them to. If we leave, Catherine will leave you a code somewhere so you can figure it out on your own," Snake said. "Go ahead and do what you feel you have to," Otacon said. His cheeks turned a little red as he added, "And if you see her, would you tell Wolf I said hi?" Snake shook his head at Otacon for still acting like a shy teenager around Sniper Wolf. XXX. After a week in Volgograd, Russia. What did happen in the past 6 months? By the time Naruto got to the first city in Russia, he had already found people who knew how to use guns. Small-time gun dealers. They had to get their weapons from a well-known source somewhere. He was trying to find out more about anyone who had in the past provided gear for the Gurlukovich mercenaries. He came across a name that Johnny had given him as the person who had done that. Even though it took a few days after Naruto found and bribed a gunrunner who could get him information high enough up the chain of command, it was still fast enough for him. That's why Naruto was sitting in an internet cafe copyright in a dark red leather coat with his dead cell sunglasses covering his eyes. His other hidden features, like his wild, spiked hair that was pulled back and his makeup-covered whisker marks, were also hidden. A shaky-looking man with short dark hair and a goatee sat next to him. "That's the one. Over there. The one you're looking for," he said in Russian as they both looked over at a blonde man about Naruto's age who was sitting at his desk with a coffee and working on his laptop. "The boss would like his money for the information," he said in English. Naruto laughed and reached into his pocket for 300,000 rubles. He then handed it to the man under the table and said, "It's all there. I was expecting it to be more for information like this." The man replied in the same language. Naruto then reached into his pocket again and took out 15,000 more rubles for the grunt who was giving him information from his superiors, a little something for your trouble. The man seemed to calm down right away as Naruto gave him money. It was cheap because if you were stupid enough to actually pick a fight against the Gurlukovich mercenaries, it would be your funeral in the end. Especially now that they're mafia affiliates, he said as he hid the bills and got up to leave. "Good luck. You're going to need it if you don't want to lose some limbs after this." He then quietly made his way out and onto the street. Naruto did nothing but sit there and wait for Johnny to leave while pretending to read a book. He was ready to stay there for hours before Johnny left because he knew Johnny would rather hang out on the internet and do nothing than train or work out. Hey, it was clearly his free time. He was free to do what he pleased. Who was Naruto to judge? Though, Johnny finally came out of the terminal he was staying in and got up to leave. Naruto waited 30 seconds after Johnny left the area to follow him because he had a clone following him to keep track of where he was. As soon as Naruto saw Johnny, he had his clone disappear out of sight. He then started following Johnny by himself because that's what he had to do to talk to him. He looked at his watch and let out a scared scream before running off. Naruto was surprised when he ran to keep up with him instead of passing him. What the hell scared him? Is something wrong? Naruto followed Johnny into an alley from a distance, ready to follow him around another corner. Maybe I'll just catch up to him, let him know it's me, and ask him what's wrong, Naruto thought. I might be able to help, he thought, but before he could turn the next corner to keep going after Johnny, an arm came out from behind the wall and hit him in the throat, knocking him to the ground. He could hear Johnny screaming while his own head was knocking. "I'm sorry I'm late, Meryl. I got caught up at the internet cafe copyright and lost track of time and..." Naruto looked up and saw Meryl holding Johnny against the wall with one hand and her other arm stretched out from clothes lining Naruto to the ground. When he saw Meryl's hand reach out and point down at Naruto in disguise, he stopped. The soldier with fiery red hair looked down at Naruto with sharp blue eyes and glared. "Who are you, and why are you following this dumbass around?" Meryl seemed to be waiting for an answer from the grounded mystery blonde. "Hurry up and answer me already." Johnny's pathetic sounding. "Hey." He laughed and popped his contacts out to show Meryl his blue eyes. "Man, you got stronger," he said. "I felt like I ran into a steel pipe just now." He got up from the ground and shook his head to get rid of the cobwebs. "Nice to see you two again, Meryl. Johnny boy." Joni said, "Boss," as Meryl let him go. She was shocked to see Naruto there. Meryl stood there with her mouth open for a moment before she finally spoke. "You can't be here. Not right now. No, this is not good. Why did you come here now?" He wasn't sure if he should have been annoyed that Meryl wasn't excited to see him in person for the first time in years, so he frowned and jumped up. "Sure, I'll just skip back across the bearing and go back into hiding again." He then snapped at her, "What the fuck do you mean why'd I come here now? Why do you think?" Oof. During that whole scene, Johnny grabbed both of his arms, and Meryl slammed her fist into his stomach and asked, "What was that for?" Meryl smiled at how well Johnny seemed to understand what he wanted and said, "Thank you, Johnny. Do you want to hit him once too?" Naruto said, still holding his stomach from the punch he had taken, "You both only get one freebie, and you just wasted it." He kind of thought that Olga would have been the first to hit him when he saw her. Why is now not a good time? Between getting framed and being pronounced dead, covering my tracks, and trying to figure out what hit me, I haven't had much time to come look for you guys, he said. Johnny walked over to a stack of boxes and sat down. "Boss, we couldn't reach you, but something's happened," he said. As she leaned against the brick wall of the alley they were talking in, Meryl asked Naruto, "Did you know that Olga was pregnant?" After giving her a nod and looking blankly at her, Naruto knew what the issue was. She had the baby, but that's not the problem. The problem is that the baby was taken. She saw Naruto clench his teeth in anger as he heard this. Who was so stupid as to steal the mercenary leader's child? He asked in a low voice. Who did it? Or do you guys not know that yet? It was likely someone Olga would have killed for free otherwise, but now she had no reason not to go after them. He was also happy to help. Johnny laughed nervously and said, "Well, we know, but we don't know." Naruto stared at him, which made him feel a little uneasy. You should know what I'm talking about, boss. They're the same weirdos who blackmailed you, Johnny said. What? That temper tantrum was pretty much expected. In fact, Meryl thought he would try to punch something when he heard that. That meant the careless person who had pushed her out of Shadow Moses was beginning to get his act together. One could only guess, yeah. Meryl added, when Olga went into labor in November, she went to a hospital that would be safe from the enemies we'd been making as a part of the Russian mafia. But the branch we were working with had gotten hooked into by the Patriots and they operated the hospital that she wound up going to. They probably walked right out the front door with Olga's child. Naruto finally lost it and punched a brick wall hard enough to break some of it. How the fuck do they keep doing this shit to people? I'm tired of this. And I can't. He was so angry that he didn't even know what to say. He leaned against a wall and sat down on the ground with his head in his hands. Where is she? Where is Olga now? I have to see her. Naruto noticed Meryl sitting next to him on the wall and said, You don't want to do that. She's off training anyway. Naruto said, Don't tell me what I don't want to do, Meryl, because you don't know what I'm up to. His tone was tired, not mean. At this point, he was sick of everything and asked, Why is she training? She shouldn't be doing anything right now. Olga shouldn't have been doing anything combat related for a while. Even though Meryl gave him a mean look, Johnny didn't back down. He said, She's training because she has 2 missions. Johnny wouldn't shut up. He has to know Meryl. He glared back at her angrily. It's not right to just let it happen. If we can't stop it, then at least he should know about it first. He saved my behind, was a friend to me before that, and got me this job to begin with. He's always going to be the boss. He had to list all the reasons why Meryl wasn't sure about what he was going to say. Didn't that sound like bad news? What did Naruto ask? He looked up from the ground and locked eyes with Meryl. She couldn't meet his gaze after hearing him ask. Hey! He barked authoritatively, which made her look back at him with a start. What do I need to know? He asked. He then looked over at Johnny, who seemed to have lost his moment of confidence. He made it clear that he wouldn't leave until he knew what he wanted to know. Johnny was right. He did need to know what they did. It wasn't fair to hide something so important from him. Well, Olga has 2 possible missions and she can't turn doing one or the other down or else they'll kill her baby. There's one that she doesn't know the specifics about yet. But apparently she can keep herself from having to do that one altogether by pulling something off first. All she has to do is find and kill someone. Didn't that sound like bad news? Once more. Naruto asked, Who? Even though there was a voice in the back of his head telling him to go with the obvious answer and not ask the question. If it was that easy, there had to be a reason she didn't just do the easier option. He knew in his heart who the target was. You. Damn it. Naruto. Age 21 took place in Volgograd, Russia, in February 2008. After receiving the shocking news that one way to get her daughter back was to find Naruto and kill him, Naruto almost lost consciousness as he thought about the possibility of a close friend killing him again. However, he was able to calm down after receiving an authoritative slap from Meryl. After that, she and Johnny took Naruto to a safer place to talk. The top of a skyscraper that was still being built but wasn't being worked on today because it was Sunday. It was a good thing it was cloudy, because if it had been sunny when Naruto learned of this, he would have thought everyone was laughing at him. Naruto said, Kill me, while pacing around. Johnny sat nearby on a stack of plywood, and Meryl stood in front of Naruto as he went back and forth. He seemed to be getting annoyed because he had been walking around erratically for 10 minutes and asking himself, Kill me? When Naruto put down 3 coffees to wait for Johnny to get up and leave the internet cafe copyright, this is what he thought would happen. For future use, it would be helpful to know if any of them lived long enough to remember not to give Naruto caffeine ever, under any circumstances. Meryl finally yelled, Yes. Kill you. Naruto was startled by how loud the pretty redhead's voice was. For the love of God, stop pacing and repeating yourself like a broken record. You're giving me a monster headache here. Naruto stopped and turned to face Meryl. The two of them just stared at each other until Naruto pressed his forehead against Meryl's. Sorry for getting upset about my best friend possibly trying to kill me. I thought we had moved on from that a long time ago. Cammy, this stinks. He spoke in a sad voice and said, Miss Olga's your best friend. Well, where am I? The conversation stopped, and Naruto began counting on his fingers as if there were a real order to the list. Olga's number 1. Meryl's number 3. You're number 5. Out of 5. Wolf's not on the list just for reference's sake. Meryl asked, why? She was confused about who number 2 and 4 would be while Johnny was complaining about being at the bottom of the totem pole. You're saying Sniper Wolf isn't your friend? No, Naruto said in an idiot voice to choose Meryl again. I'm saying that friends with benefits and family members don't count when it comes to my list. You can't impartially rank a female friend if you've seen what that friend looks like naked. It's just unfair to everyone else. He then pointed at Meryl. You don't count because I didn't see you naked. I only saw your back that one time and turned away so you wouldn't shoot me. Because you're not that stupid. Exactly. Why are we talking about this? Because I really don't want to talk about how Olga's probably looking for me to kill me, but I guess we don't have a choice, do we? That made the young soldiers think about how serious things really were, which put an end to their little bit of fun. In spite of this, Johnny tried to keep things positive by saying, hey, we don't really know for sure that Miss Olga would kill you. You can either kill Naruto or go on a mystery mission. Meryl spoke up and shook her head. Neither of those things sound good or easy. If you had to choose, which would you do? An unnamed mission that would probably be the hardest thing you can imagine, or fight the most annoying enemy who has more tricks than the world's best magician on his best day. That doesn't even include the personal things. I can't see how Miss Olga could look boss in his eye and pull the trigger. After having to deal with her and Sniper Wolf in some way or another for 3 years, Meryl thought it was funny that Johnny didn't know much about women. If it's for her child, she won't be rational about it because there's no rationality when it comes to that, she said. And she was off training. If she could just be given a job that she could give to one of her mercenaries, why would she need to train? But now that I think about it, why would she go on a trip to train to kill Naruto? Did she really believe she would be able to fight him? The vast majority of the Gerlukovich mercenaries would probably vote to shoot Naruto in the head just because. He would likely be killed before she even had to look at him. He sighed and leaned against a straight steel support beam of the building. Where is Wolf? I need a different point of view on this whole thing. Oh. I'm never too far away from where I should be, little Proby, a voice on the other side of the steel beam said in a very common Middle Eastern brogue. By the way, I could swear that my ears were burning just before I got here. You weren't talking about me while I wasn't there, were you? She asked from the other side of the beam, making herself invisible. Before Wolf came out from where she was hiding, Naruto asked, is the right answer to that question no? This gave him a good look at her. She still had long blonde hair, was ridiculously beautiful, and was wearing the same suit he had seen her in Foxhound, though this one had a more tundra-like color scheme. Hi Wolf, he said as he turned around and hugged her. It's been a while. Wolf moved away from Naruto and looked him over, stopping at the bags under his eyes. Yes, it has. When she realized they were him, she frowned the same way he did. My God, you look terrible. Have you been getting any sleep at all? She asked. She would have been okay with the answer of the few hours a week he got while in Foxhound. The answer was, not really. It was less than usual, but that wasn't important right now. In a way, he didn't care about his own health or well-being at the moment. He was like, what the hell is going on around here? Wolf got defensive, so Meryl spoke up. He already knows everything about what's going on. Even the part about killing him. Since everyone there already knew what she was going to say, Wolf looked back at her former subordinate and flicked him on the forehead to get his full attention. Right. You're going to run. You're going to run very, very far away and keep your head down. What? Naruto asked incredulously. Fuck that. Running's all I've been doing for 6 months. I want to help. Wolf then reached into one of his hidden places, cocked Naruto's gun, put it in his hand, and pointed it at his stomach, asking, what are you doing? Wolf's eyes didn't have any fondness like they usually answered. If you want to help, then you can pull that trigger and we can drag your body back to base. If you don't want to do that, then you will do what I tell you. There isn't a move to make here, Naruto. Do you have even the slightest inkling of where they have Olga's daughter? The enemy is not clear. You cannot just take yourself to their front doorstep and blow them to smithereens. The anger in Naruto's eyes briefly turned red, but he quickly controlled it. I know that Wolf. I've been living like a damn ghost for the last 6 months, and before that I was a hired killer for the same people that used me and threw me away like a shaving cartridge. He turned away from the group of people before he did something wrong and kicked a metal beam that held up the skyscraper with a loud clang. These people know who we are, and I don't know a damn thing about them except for dead-end leads from 50 years ago. I don't know how I've been able to keep you guys out of their sights for this long after Shadow Moses. But you're free now, Johnny said, trying not to sound too happy about Naruto no longer having to follow the Patriot's orders. Isn't that what you were working for all along? Olga's not free, and neither is anyone else. Being free means being able to do what you want. But slipping through borders like a rat, hiding from your own friends, and not being able to talk to anyone or do anything during the dia, that's not freedom. We're like dogs with extra long choke chains, Naruto said, focusing on the gun in his hand. Wolf, you said that you liked something about me, which is why you couldn't kill me at Shadow Moses. Wolf replied, remembering the last time she had lost a battle, because nothing could make you break your morals. You always did what you thought was right, and that bleeding heart of yours. Naruto nodded and said, I'll find a way. I promise. I don't know how it'll work, but I'll make it so that you guys don't have to keep going like this. I'll get Olga's baby back somehow. I'll do it. How? Naruto stopped moving and looked at the gun in his hand with a serious and thoughtful face. He then turned the safety back on and put the gun where it needed to be hidden, saying, any way I have to. He sighed and looked at the other person. I might need help again soon. Just keep me posted on what's going on. And tell. We're not telling Olga that you were here, Meryl said, cutting Naruto off from what she thought he'd say. I know what you want her to know for, and it's a bad idea not just for us but especially for you. She knows you didn't kill her father, but Ocelot has said as much and he has the men on his side in that regard. They wanted your blood beforehand and this just made it 10 times worse. She can't exactly bring up that you were on that tanker in the first place because of her, could she? So she doesn't say anything at all, Johnny said. Everyone else thinks it's because she's so mad that she stays quiet whenever you come up, but Wolf says it was starting to bother her. Johnny looked at Naruto to clarify, I'm not the one to ask about it, boss. So, Naruto turned to Wolf and she said, everything that's happened is getting to be too much. I can see it. She's starting to believe that you actually did eliminate her father for whatever reason. She wasn't there to see it. No one was. Ocelot was the only one that knows of what went on down there. Tell her I didn't do it, Naruto said. Ocelot did it when he took Metal Gear Ray. Sergei threw the marine at him and Ocelot shot him when he shot through the other guy. Calm down, Wolf said, placing a hand on his cheek to prevent him from getting more angry. You aren't telling anyone anything that we didn't already assume in the first place. But we don't know where Ocelot hid Ray, so we can't just take it. Olga wants to kill him. It takes everything she has to keep from pulling a weapon on him whenever he shows himself, which is fewer and far between these days. If she did that, then she would lose the support of her father's men. Ocelot was the last of the old guard of Russian soldiers. They looked up to him as a legend and Sergei Gerlukovich's closest friend. Olga was younger than most of the Gerlukovich mercenaries' soldiers. They loved her because she had been with them her whole life, but they thought she was too young to be in charge. Too likely to make bad choices. Because of her morals, she wanted to just get rid of Ocelot, but she couldn't do that and keep their full loyalty. The life of a leader was too impersonal if she couldn't even take care of her own personal issues. The unit's safety was more important than her problem with Ocelot, and killing him would break it up. They had already avoided what could have been a major mess at Shadow Moses by pure luck and good timing. If they had gotten involved directly, they would have been wiped out. They must have heard about the unit that way in the first place. Naruto said in a low voice, you have my frequency. Don't use it on anything that anyone can trace. I need to get back. He then put in his green contacts again to hide his eyes and started putting on makeup again to hide his whisker marks. What are you going to do now, boss? You've only been here for a week or something, right? What's next? Johnny asked with a nod, believing he had learned Naruto's new frequency. Just to take care of Olga and yourselves. Meryl glared at Naruto's back and said, you never answered him. He was being dishonest. His heart must have hurt when he heard about Olga and her baby, but there was something very strange about how he was just leaving it at that. Johnny and she knew they would have to physically stop him from trying to see Olga directly at some point. What are you going to do next? After looking over the edge of the skyscraper, Naruto said, I told you that already. I'm going to go do whatever I have to do. See you guys soon. Soon? Meryl asked with a smirk. Sure, like, 3 years, soon, I bet. They all looked at Naruto as he came down the stairs to leave the skyscraper. Wolf's eyes never left Naruto's face as he spoke, saying, I don't like the way he said that. The way he spoke was foreboding. What do you mean? Johnny asked. All he said was that he was going to see us soon. A frown on Johnny's face, Wolf said, not that. When he said he would do whatever he had to do, he sounded like someone who knew all of their options. It sounded very foreboding. Just thinking about that meeting made her feel uneasy and sick to her stomach. Come on, Wolf. Come on, Wolf, Meryl said. This is Naruto here. He just acts crazy. He's not really into putting himself into trouble. Besides, what can he do when he doesn't even know where Olga's baby is? There isn't even really anything he can do at this point about it. There is one thing he can do, and I just hope he ignores that solution altogether. XXX end of February 2008. A border between Washington State and Canada. Otakon sat in front of his computer and punched away at any set of classified files he could get his hands on. This seemed to be the only meaningful thing he did these days. When he found something that made him smile, he said, "Huh, finally. Something at last." Catherine said, "What?" "I'm up," from where she was sleeping on a couch nearby in front of her laptop. One of the only lights in the main room of the cabin was from Otakon's computer, so she looked around. She looked at the time and frowned and yawned as she turned off her laptop's sleep mode. "For the love of... don't you people ever sleep?" she asked as she rubbed her eyes. "We grab some when we can." Catherine jumped out of her chair in fear when she heard a rough voice. "Snake?" she asked. She looked to the corner of the dark room by the open window and saw part of Snake's silhouette in the moonlight and the burning end of a cigarette. "You scared the hell out of me. You guys are seriously twisted. I can see why Aniki likes you both so much." Snake grunted and smiled in the dark before taking a deep breath outside. "Yeah, I guess you could say that. You get used to it after a while." "He did," he said, pointing at Otakon, who was still working on files. "Anyway, what did you find that was important enough to wake up Miller Brat?" Catherine smiled back at Snake but also looked at Otakon. "I've picked up a trail that we can use." Otakon started to explain as the others rose to go to his computer. 2 years ago Naruto saw Otakon with George Sears in France, but he couldn't get to either one before they got away. So I placed him into the proxy engine of my computer just in case. Untitled images, any documents of marked importance of George Sears. It was mostly just his political crap from his 2000 and 2004 election, but I did find something here. It turned out to be an old picture of a Liberian rebel group moving through a town in the early 1990s when I clicked on it to make it bigger so I could look at it better. Even though many of the soldiers caught on camera were way too young to be fighting in a rebel militia, it was just another day at the office. Kate shook her head at what she saw and remembered seeing Naruto train with so many dangerous weapons when he was only 13 years old. Like the way he looked at her after being in Afghanistan and Iraq, the look in their eyes scared her. At the same time, Snake was playing a little game because showing them that picture didn't help at all. The game was called, "Which of these things doesn't belong?" And Snake finally focused on a blurry figure in the corner that didn't look quite right. "Otakon, can you?" "Otakon, are you ready to zoom in on that picture in the corner and focus it?" Snake asked with a shocked grin as the picture came into focus. "That looks just like," Snake said as his cigarette fell to the floor. "George Sears." Snake finished where his partner left off. Catherine crouched down and leaned closer to the TV to see it better. When Otakon saw that she was trying to make the connection, he pulled up a picture of Sears from his first presidential campaign in 2000. She compared the two pictures and the whistling said, "Wow." The Liberian Civil War ended in 1996. 4 years and he looked like that afterward. Father Time sure hit him in the face. If you look at the picture from before 2000, Sears' hair was still brown, but there were just a few gray streaks here and there. He did look a bit like someone, but Catherine couldn't quite put her finger on it either. Snake asked out loud, "Why was Sears in Africa? He's never been in the military, not even in the UNA, but there he was. gun in hand, traveling with the rebels. In fact, he might be the most secretive president ever. But he's a patriot puppet president like James Johnson, so there's that too. After Shadow Moses went public, Sears left the country, Otakon said, turning his attention back to the picture of the Liberian Civil War. And Naruto said he saw him with Ocelot on a small chartered jet. That was enough to get them a long way away. Where would he go from there? He asked himself. Catherine looked at the two men and asked them, "You're going to go to Africa, right? Liberia?" With a blank look on her face. She was shocked when Snake said, "No, of course not." She thought they would already be looking for the best way to cross the Atlantic to the other continent. "We won't find anything in Liberia. That's no place to hide from anyone these days. We're going to Sierra Leone," she said. He looked at the 19-year-old girl strangely when she asked, "What's wrong?" As Catherine lifted her hand from her forehead to show a red mark, she sighed and shook her head. "Nothing. Do you want me to leave Aniki a message and tell him, or should we wait for him to get back first?" Snake walked back to the window to get another cigarette and smoke idly. "We're waiting. If we're really going so far out of the country that we need to cross the ocean, then we might need his ninja skills to pull it off if we can't bribe our way onto a freighter." Katarina was amazed as she watched Otakon plan a route to the east coast of North America. "How's a ninja trick going to get us on a freighter to Sierra Leone? Wait, how are we going to bribe anyone to get to Sierra Leone in the first place? You and Aniki are dead terrorists." That does sound like the name of a good band. "Actually, it's probably going to be you and I that do the bribing and put in the face time. Naruto and Snake are going to be our no-questions-asked luggage," Otakon told Catherine as he turned around in his chair and adjusted his glasses in a smart way. Catherine gave him a raised eyebrow and then turned to Snake. Snake just nodded with a grumpy look on his face, as if he knew he would have to be stuck in a small space for a long time to get to Sierra Leone. "And you're okay with that? You guys are really weird," Catherine said. XXX After more than a month. March 2008. Naruto. Age 21. In a small bay town in Sierra Leone. Never again, Catherine swore as she loaded her and Otakon's gear onto a rented pickup truck across the ocean. "That was the worst 34 days of my life." She then pointed at Otakon, who was driving, and said, "You can go back with them if you want to. I'm flying back to North America." "No, you're not, Kitty." Catherine heard from something she had just checked was in the truck. "You're taking a freighter back too, just like everyone else. Now can we get going? I haven't stretched my legs in 3 days, and arthritis Snake is probably still in that stupid box he put himself in." Snake's voice, which came from a very heavy cardboard box, said, "Shut up, brat. But he's kind of right too. Hurry up and get us somewhere safe already." Catherine got in the truck next to Otakon, who had the rental truck ready to go, and said, "There's got to be an easier way to do this stuff. It's the 21st century. The two grumpy soldiers who hadn't seen daylight in who knows how long didn't need to be told this again." As the truck went over the bumpy street, Otakon said, "Not without the connections. Connections that we don't have right now. We paid them not to check our stuff, but if we had tried to sneak Naruto and Snake on without hiding them, they would have caused trouble." Bump. They heard a faint sound outside in the back. "Ow," it said, "drive better." After rolling her eyes at her loud brother, Catherine looked out the window and smirked, "Hit that pothole." Otakon replied with a smirk and hit the hole with another loud jumble of things in the back. "Ow. Damn it, Otakon." XXX After some time. Naruto, Snake, Otakon, and Catherine all checked into a hotel room under a fake name and paid cash when they were finally freed from where they were hiding. All of their cards were on the table, showing why they were there in the first place. He put down a printed copy of the picture of George Sears fighting in the Liberian Civil War and said, "Okay. This was never brought up, probably because his history had been changed, and it was the only clue they had as to how to find the man. Finding him would be a big help. This is the small boy unit from the Liberian Civil War. Now the first one may have ended 12 years ago, but things like this never truly go away." She picked up where Otakon left off and said, "And this is another one of those things. After the Second Liberian Civil War ended a few years ago, there wasn't really anything left for them in Liberia. There was no more fighting to do, so they left to a place where they could be useful again. Fighting is all they knew how to do." She looked at Naruto for a moment before getting back to the point. So they stuck together and became the enforcers for a diamond mining operation. Naruto looked at her like she or Otakon was going to say something else, but neither of them did. This made him raise an eyebrow and ask, "And? That's it?" The blonde girl nodded and sat back in her chair as Naruto spoke again. "All right. I guess that says enough. So how are we going to get in to see if Sears is there?" After giving each other worried looks, Otakon turned to Naruto and Snake and said, "Well, from what we heard around town, the place is a total fortress that keeps growing outward to look for more minerals. It's about 100 miles inland, and everyone stays at least 10 miles clear of it." "Why?" "Because the security happens to be insane sadists," Catherine said with a bit of hurt in her tone. "Have you ever met a man that used to mine diamonds until he got his hands cut off for holding out on them? Because I did today. It was just a paranoid accusation, but they went ahead and cut the poor man's hands off and dropped him outside of the camp for dead." Snake could hear Catherine laughing at the horrible things the former members of the small boy unit did, and he had to remind herself that she had never seen anything like that in person before. "You could blame the PTSD, but I've heard a lot of things about how child soldiers were trained to fight. Any of them that actually grew UPA, if they didn't get serious counseling, there's no way they could cope in the end with living the way they did," he said, seeing Catherine glare at him and grunt. "They're notorious for the treatment of workers," Otakon said, marking the spot on the map of the camp area. "Sierra Leone's standing army hasn't made any moves on them due to the sheer amount of prisoners they keep. They'll kill anyone they wish for any reason at all. In the case of an emergency, they'll gather all of the prisoners together and lock the camp down. Any problems and they won't hesitate to shoot innocents." The dry air in the room made Naruto smack his lips together. He nodded and said, Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and say that even if Sears doesn't end up being there, I'm blowing that thing up anyway." "We're not directly attacking the place, kid," Snake said before Naruto got ahead of himself. "Didn't you just hear? If you think you can get your ass in there without setting anything off, then be my guest, but are you really going to put that many people at risk just like that?" Naruto asked out loud, "Well, how are we going to get in to check for Sears if you don't want to sneak in, Mr. Hero?" He looked skeptical. "We need a two-pronged attack," Snake said to the others. "One of us will have to actually get inside at some point, but we need an inside man already there to soften things up and get things set beforehand. From the two sides of the coin, we'll have everything we need to put the squeeze on this place and find out all we need in the process." Naruto was about to ask, "Okay, sounds good, but who's the ins?" when he saw Snake calmly touching his nose with his index finger. "Are you seriously doing that right now? Is he?" He then looked around and saw Otakon and Catherine doing the same thing. "Oh, come on. You two were never going to be the ones to go in the first place. I've got to go." Snake smiled and asked, "Why would they take me? I'm old and arthritic. Remember? I'll just get my hands cut off or worse." He didn't say that 36 wasn't that old, which is something he usually did when he argued with Naruto. "You're all young and spry with those track star muscles. They'll pick you up in a heartbeat. And you're an American blonde with blue eyes, too?" Naruto began with a snarky, "So because you're an old-ass mana," Snake growled, but the younger soldier didn't care because he didn't like what he was being told at all. "And because I am awesome and young, I have to go do the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life?" He asked, "What if they just try to fucking shoot me or cut my hands off like other people?" "Then you can fight back and kill them if it gets that far," Otakon replied with a shrug. "They're not going to tie you up. Anything other than that though, and you've just got to take it until Snake gets you out." The glowering look from Naruto caused him to giggle nervously. "You're a tough guy, aren't you? You can take it for a few days. It's just a little mining. Keep your head down, be good, don't start trouble, and in a few days you can turn the place upside down." And right in front of him was the worst undercover mission Naruto had ever been on. Someone who is being held captive in an African diamond work camp. "This is going to suck so bad." Otakon gave Naruto a pat on the shoulder and said, "You can do it." Naruto slammed his head on the table and screamed, "That's how much I hate you right now. What kind of stupid plan has me locked up with a bunch of crazy former child soldiers?" After hearing the whole story from the others, Catherine said, "I don't like it either, Aniki. Just give it a few days. 3 days. If you don't get anything in 3 days, then we'll just go ahead with the rest of the plan we come up with and get you out. You have your codec, so I can talk to you whenever." You'll be by yourself, but we'll still be around. There was silence in the room until Naruto spoke again. Okay. There's only one way I'm doing this. If you can't get this for me, I'm not leaving this town in that direction, he said. Oh, lighten up. This'll be easy, everyone agreed. XXX 10 kilometers to the west of the mine. As you can see by the dozens of empty bottles lying on the floor of the truck they had rented, Naruto didn't care that it was a bad idea. He only agreed to go on this mission if he could get incredibly, wildly, and dangerously drunk before and during his trip into enemy territory. He had never been able to do that before, and he was 21. Because he was immune to foreign substances, he needed a lot more than a normal person would. He asked them to let him do it. The 2-hour trip out there on the dirt road had been a test of how well you could focus and move your hands while drunk. He also made clones while he was drunk. He'll never forget those 2 hours of fun. He was also wondering why no one had stopped him yet while the stereo played annoyingly loud rock music. He was thinking mostly straight again. He must have been getting sober again. Also just in time. He really didn't want to get drunk in front of bloodthirsty killers and try to act right. I think he'd do something stupid and kill one of them when they got close. Even so, it was fun for a while. At that point, he saw a crude blockade of trucks blocking the dirt road. Naruto sighed to himself and quickly called out, "Hello," on his codec. "Aniki, I swear to God, if you're drunk dialing me again, I'm going to. I'm about to get my ass beaten by crazy militia and captured for slave labor. Are you sure that's the last thing you want to leave me with?" "Oh, sorry, good luck. Be tough in there, okay? Goodbye, kitty. Tell Otakon I'm going to kick him in the balls when this is over." With that, he ended the transmission and opened a bottle of whiskey in the car. As he pulled over, people watching the blockade pointed about 7 AK-47s at him and yelled, "Hey! What's with this? You're blocking the road." He took a swig and enjoyed it. With everyone around his truck, maybe it would dull the pain of what was about to happen. Crack. Not at all. Being hit in the eye with the barrel of a gun through an open window hurt. He wasn't drunk enough to do that. Naruto was pulled out of the truck by one of the soldiers as the door opened. He was then thrown to the dirt road, where he fell and said, "Okay." His words, "That guy's getting it when I start tearing that base up," made him get down on his hands and knees and take a shot to the back of the head from another Alaska 47. He then said, "Grr. I'm going to shove that gun up your ass and hold the trigger down until I empty the clip." Then, after beating him enough, they dragged him to his feet and threw him against the blockade trucks. Then they pointed their guns at him and said, "Get in the back or die in the road like a dog. Your choice, American." Naruto pretended to be scared and quickly nodded before getting into the truck bed. Another soldier got in with him and kept a gun to his head while the others drove off. "What's going on?" he asked, trying to sound as scared as possible on purpose, but all he got was another gunshot to the face. He had never been caught by anyone before, either on purpose or by accident. These were clearly the types of people who wanted prisoners to be quiet because they didn't like it when people talked. They had guns, too. Still, getting hit with that Alaska 47 was really annoying him, and he couldn't even look them in the eye to glare. He swore that if he did it right then, the guy would try to shoot him just because he was so eager to kill. Naruto thought to himself, "Oh. I am going to savor the payoff to this." He hoped very much that he would quickly figure out what he was doing. It would likely have a big effect on how well he kept his cool.
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.